Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I returned home from my 2-week business trip feeling tired but excited to see Melissa. I thought everything would be normal, but the moment I walked in, something felt off. The house was cleaner than usual, but it had a strange coldness, like someone was trying too hard. Melissa greeted me with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe I was just tired and paranoid. A few days later, I noticed small things that didn't make sense. Bills I hadn't seen before, a few bank statements that were missing, and odd questions from Melissa about my schedule. At first, I ignored them, but my gut kept telling me something was wrong. I had always trusted her, and I couldn't believe she would do anything to hurt me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was happening behind my back. One evening, I sat down with a cup of coffee and tried to think calmly. I remembered the estate my father left me and how it was supposed to stay secure until I managed it myself. I didn't think much of it at the time, trusting that Melissa would never touch it. But curiosity got the better of me. I decided to check the legal papers and bank accounts more closely. What I found made my stomach drop. The inheritance that was supposed to be mine had been transferred to her name while I was gone. I read the documents over and over, hoping it was a mistake, but everything was signed, everything was official. I felt betrayed in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't just the money, it was the trust, the life I thought we shared. I confronted Melissa calmly at first, asking simple questions about the transfer. She smiled nervously, giving vague answers, saying it was for our future and that I didn't need to worry. Her words didn't match the evidence, and I could tell she was hiding something. The more I asked, the more uncomfortable she became. That smile faded, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. I started paying more attention to small details, receipts, messages, and hints of things she hadn't mentioned. It became clear she had gone on a trip while I was away, something secret, something she didn't want me to know. My anger grew, but so did a determination. I realized I couldn't let this go unnoticed or unpunished. I had to act, but I had to be smart about it. At that moment, I knew my life had changed. The betrayal cut deep, but I also knew that I could turn this pain into strength. I would find out everything she had done, and I would make sure she couldn't get away with it. It was the beginning of a long journey, and even though I felt hurt, I also felt a strange clarity. I wouldn't let anyone take what was mine, not even the person I trusted the most. The days ahead would test me in ways I couldn't imagine, but one thing was certain, I wouldn't be powerless. The story of what happened next would change everything in my life, and it all started with that shocking discovery. When I got back home fully settled from my trip, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Small bills were missing, and some new statements appeared in our mail that I hadn't seen before. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe it was just a mix-up or a mistake. But the more I looked, the stranger it all seemed. Numbers didn't add up, charges were unexplained, and some accounts seemed tampered with. Melissa seemed different too. Every time I tried to ask about our finances or these odd statements, she became nervous. Her smiles were forced, her words hurried. If I pressed too much, she would brush me off, saying I was overthinking things or that she had already taken care of everything. That dismissive attitude made my gut twist with unease. I had always trusted her completely, but now a seed of doubt had been planted. I tried to remain calm and not let anger cloud my thinking. I realized I needed facts, not assumptions. Late one night, I reached out to a lawyer I trusted and asked them to help me review the estate documents and bank accounts. I didn't tell Melissa anything. I just needed to know the truth. Going through the papers was shocking. I couldn't believe what I was reading at first. The inheritance my father had left me, which I thought was secure and untouched, had been legally transferred to Melissa's name while I was away. Every signature was real, every document properly filed. There was no mistake. My mind raced with disbelief. How could someone I loved and trusted betray me in such a calculated way? It wasn't just about money. This was my father's legacy, something meant to protect my family, something I had worked to honor. The betrayal felt personal and deep, as if everything I believed about my marriage had been a lie. My heart sank, but beneath that sinking feeling, a sharp edge of anger started to form. I felt both hurt and furious, and I knew I couldn't act blindly. I spent hours thinking about how this had happened. Melissa had planned this carefully, waiting for the right moment when I was away. She knew exactly what she was doing, and that realization made the betrayal sting even more. The trust one had placed in her had been used against me. Even though I was overwhelmed with anger and sadness, I knew I had to stay focused. Hitting back recklessly would only ruin my chance to reclaim what was mine. I had to be smart, gather evidence, and make a clear plan. The seed of revenge and justice started to grow in my mind, quietly but firmly. That night, I went to bed feeling restless, but my thoughts were clear. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me, and I wouldn't let Melissa get away with it. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing: I had to discover everything she had done and make sure the truth came out. The discovery of her deception had changed everything, and from that point on, I couldn't trust anyone blindly again. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. One evening, I asked Melissa to sit down with me and explain what was happening with the inheritance. I tried to keep my voice calm, hoping that maybe there was a simple explanation, something I hadn't considered. Melissa smiled at me and shook her head gently. "John, I did it for us, for our future," she said. "You don't need to worry about it. I just wanted to make sure everything was safe." Her tone was soft, almost convincing, but something about it didn't feel right. I could tell she was hiding more than she was saying. I pressed further, asking about specific details, the timing of the transfer, the accounts involved, and why she hadn't mentioned anything before. She hesitated, offering vague answers, repeating that it was for our good. Her calmness was strange. She seemed rehearsed, like she had prepared these words to deflect any questions. That's when I started noticing little clues that didn't add up. I found receipts in her purse that suggested hotels and services I had no idea about. There were flight confirmations and bookings under names I didn't recognize. It became clear she had taken a trip while I was away, a trip she had deliberately kept secret. Everything pointed to her using the inheritance for something personal, something she hadn't thought I would find out. My stomach twisted as I realized the extent of the deception. Melissa wasn't just being secretive about finances, she had gone behind my back, using what was supposed to be mine to fund her own plans. The calm, polite demeanor she wore now only made the betrayal feel heavier. She smiled, talked softly, and acted like nothing was wrong, but I could see the cracks in her story. I wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I needed to think, to understand exactly what she had done and why. Each small inconsistency I found added fuel to the anger that was building inside me. I felt the weight of every lie, every hidden detail, and every manipulation she had used to cover her actions. Melissa's lies, though gentle and measured, couldn't hide the reality. I felt a mix of hurt, shock, and rage. The betrayal was personal and calculated. Everything she said felt hollow now, every reassurance meaningless. I realized I couldn't trust a single word without proof. By the end of that confrontation, I knew two things for certain: Melissa had been dishonest from the start, and I couldn't let this slide. The calmness she tried to maintain only made my determination stronger. I would uncover every secret, every hidden action, and I would make sure she faced the consequences of what she had done. That night, I lay awake thinking about the next steps. Her lies had pushed me to a point where I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had to plan carefully, but I also had to act. The betrayal had opened my eyes, and there was no turning away from the truth I was about to uncover. A few days after our tense conversation, I found something that changed everything. While looking for a document, I noticed a hotel receipt sticking out of a folder in Melissa's bag. At first, I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded it carefully and stared at the details. The receipt showed a stay at a high-end hotel in another state, along with charges for dinners, spa treatments, and excursions. None of it made sense. I immediately wondered why she would go on such a trip and why she hadn't told me. What made it worse was that the receipt listed another name, Laura. I had never heard of her before. Melissa never mentioned any friend named Laura, let alone someone she would travel with secretly. It was clear this was not just a simple getaway, it was carefully hidden from me. I started searching for more clues. I found flight tickets and hotel confirmations hidden among her personal papers. Each one added more pieces to the puzzle. She had planned this trip weeks in advance, coordinated every detail, and kept it completely secret while I was away. It became obvious that she had used money from my father's inheritance to fund it. The lavishness of the trip alone told me this wasn't a small expense, it was significant. As I pieced together the details, anger and disbelief grew inside me. She hadn't just betrayed me financially, she had manipulated my life while I trusted her. Every decision I thought we had made together, every plan I thought we shared, now felt like a lie. The realization hit me hard. My own wife had been living a double life, enjoying luxuries at my expense, without a second thought for the pain or consequences. The more I discovered, the deeper my sense of betrayal became. It wasn't just the money, it was the secrecy, the deception, and the fact that someone I trusted completely could plan such a deliberate lie. My mind kept going over the receipts, the flights, the hidden bookings. I could almost picture her there, laughing, relaxing, completely unaware of the storm she had created at home. I felt my trust crumble, replaced by a mix of fury and resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine anymore, it was about exposing the truth and making sure she couldn't continue manipulating and hiding things from me. I knew I had to stay calm and collected, but inside, the fire of anger was burning strong. That night, I sat in the living room, looking at the stack of evidence I had gathered. Every receipt, every confirmation, every little hidden detail painted a picture of betrayal I could no longer ignore. I understood now that Melissa's actions weren't impulsive, they were planned and deliberate. And I knew that if I wanted justice, I couldn't waste any time. This secret trip had changed everything, and I needed to be ready for what came next. After uncovering Melissa's secret trip, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief I couldn't shake. I kept asking myself over and over, how could someone I loved so deeply betray me like this? I replayed moments from our marriage in my head, trying to find signs I had missed, but everything seemed normal back then. Her smile, her words, our plans, they all now felt like part of a carefully crafted lie. I remembered the sacrifices I had made for our family. Long hours at work, skipping vacations, giving up personal time, all to build a life I thought we shared. I had trusted her completely, thinking that she would honor that trust and stand by me through everything. Now, that trust felt like it had been taken and twisted against me. Every little memory of our life together carried a new weight. I thought about our conversations, the moments I had opened up to her, and the plans we had made for the future. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the reality that she had been plotting behind my back. The feeling of betrayal was suffocating. I felt alone, even though she was still there in the house. I also struggled with self-doubt. I kept wondering if I had been blind, naive, or too trusting. Could I have seen the signs earlier? Did I miss something obvious? These questions ran through my mind endlessly. The emotional turmoil wasn't just about anger, it was about the loss of certainty and the shock of realizing that the person I counted on the most could hurt me so deeply. Sleep became difficult. Every night, I would lie awake thinking about what had happened, trying to process the mix of sorrow, anger, and confusion. I felt a deep ache in my chest, a sense of loss not only of money or security but of the version of life I believed I had with her. I also felt a growing determination, though it was buried under the pain. The betrayal had cut deeply, but it had also made something clear: I couldn't let this define me. I had to face the reality, confront the lies, and find a way to take back what had been stolen. The emotional weight was heavy, but it also sharpened my focus. For hours, I sat thinking about everything: the moments of happiness, the trust one had given freely, and the way she had used it against me. I realized that my feelings were valid, that the hurt and anger were part of processing the betrayal. And while it was painful, I also understood that I couldn't let this pain paralyze me. The emotional turmoil became a turning point. I knew that I had to turn this hurt into action, to be patient, careful, and strategic. Melissa had shaken my world, but I also realized that I still had control over what I did next. The pain was sharp, but it was also a reminder that I deserved justice and truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I got it. After days of barely sleeping and struggling with everything I had discovered, I reached a point where I knew I couldn't keep sitting in silence. The pain was still there, but it slowly turned into something else, a clear decision that I wasn't going to let Melissa walk all over me. She had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored, and if I didn't take action now, I would lose more than just money. I would lose the last bit of respect I had for myself. One morning, after hours of thinking things through, I called my lawyer again. I told him everything I had found out since our last conversation, the secret trip, the hidden receipts, the hotel stays, and the way she used the inheritance behind my back. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said the one thing I needed to hear: "We can fight this, but it has to be done carefully." That became the beginning of my plan. I wasn't going to confront her blindly again or act out of anger. I needed solid steps, and I needed to be patient. My lawyer explained what documents I needed, what evidence would help the case, and how we could challenge the transfer legally. It wouldn't be fast, but it was possible. That gave me a sense of hope I hadn't felt in days. I started gathering everything quietly. Every slip of paper, every screenshot, every detail about her trip and finances, I collected it all. I made sure she didn't notice a thing. When she was at work or distracted, I went through old files, found bank statements, and organized everything neatly. Each piece of evidence made me feel more in control, like I was slowly taking back the power she tried to steal from me. The plan wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about showing her that I wasn't as blind or helpless as she thought. If I had reacted in anger, she might have twisted the situation or tried to hide more. But by staying calm and strategic, I could catch her off guard. My lawyer suggested waiting for the right moment, when everything was lined up and ready, so we could make a move she wouldn't be able to undo. I also started acting normally around her, even though it was hard. I didn't want her to suspect anything. I forced myself to keep conversations simple, to nod politely, to avoid showing frustration. Every day felt like a test, but I reminded myself of the end goal: reclaiming what was mine and exposing the truth. At night, I would sit at the kitchen table with the folder of evidence, going through everything again. It wasn't out of doubt, it was to remind myself why I was doing this. Her lies, her trip, her dismissive attitude, it all pushed me further into staying focused. Little by little, the chaos inside me settled. I had a plan, and I had the determination to see it through. The betrayal had shaken me, but it also made me stronger. And now, for the first time since discovering everything, I felt ready. Ready to fight back. Ready to take control again. Ready to make sure Melissa finally faced the consequences of her choices. Once the plan was ready, I knew it was time to move from thinking to acting. I didn't rush. I didn't let my emotions lead me. Instead, I followed every step my lawyer and I had discussed, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. The first thing I did was organize all the evidence I had collected. I made copies of the hotel receipts, travel confirmations, and the financial documents that showed the transfer of the inheritance. Every piece of information was now in a secure folder that Melissa would never find. I also pulled bank statements from the months before my trip and compared them to the weeks after. The differences were obvious. Large withdrawals, unexplained transfers, and payments to places I had never been. All of it helped show that the inheritance wasn't used for anything related to our shared life. It was used for her own plans. That detail mattered. It could make the legal challenge stronger. Throughout this time, Melissa acted like everything was normal. She talked casually, went out as she always did, and even tried to act affectionate at times. It was strange to look at her and know exactly what she had done while she had no idea I was preparing to expose every part of it. She truly believed she was still in control, that her lies were safe. That false confidence made it easier for me to keep my calm. I also met with my lawyer again to review the evidence. He was confident that with the right timing, we could challenge the inheritance transfer and prove that it was done under manipulation and without my consent. He showed me the loopholes we could use and explained how the law protected people from exactly this kind of deceit. It was comforting to know I had a real chance to win. Day by day, I started acting more composed around Melissa. Not because I forgave her, but because staying calm kept her unaware. I avoided arguments, didn't bring up money, and acted like I had accepted her earlier explanations. I wanted her to feel safe so that she wouldn't try to hide anything or change her behavior before we were ready to move forward legally. Meanwhile, I continued gathering details. I checked our shared accounts, old emails, and even old text messages she thought I would never look at. Little things popped up here and there, small mentions of her friend Laura, plans that were disguised as girls' nights, and conversations that hinted at things she was preparing long before my trip. Each discovery strengthened my case and reminded me that I was doing the right thing. The more information I collected, the more confident I felt. The sadness and confusion that once controlled me slowly faded. In their place came a clear focus. I wasn't just reacting to her betrayal anymore, I was taking charge. I wasn't the one being fooled, I was the one quietly turning everything around. By the time everything was ready, I knew I had shifted the situation. Melissa still walked around the house with the same confidence as before, unaware that her control over the situation was slipping. She didn't know that every smile she gave, every lie she repeated, was only bringing me closer to exposing the truth. My calm actions were working. The tide was turning. And soon, she would realize that the person she thought she could deceive so easily was no longer in the dark. The day finally came when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had all the evidence I needed, and I was ready to confront Melissa. I stayed calm even though my heart was pounding. I wanted her to see that I wasn't angry in a rash way, I was collected, prepared, and in control. I called her into the living room and told her we needed to talk seriously about the inheritance. She tried to smile, acting like everything was fine, but I could tell she sensed something was different. I placed the folder of documents on the table in front of her and opened it slowly. Each piece of evidence was laid out carefully: hotel receipts from her secret trip, flight confirmations, credit card statements showing charges that had nothing to do with our life together, and the legal documents proving the inheritance had been transferred into her name without my consent. I spoke clearly, pointing to each piece of proof as I explained it. Melissa, this isn't a mistake. You used my father's inheritance for your own plans while I was away. Everything here shows exactly what you did. My voice was steady, leaving no room for denial. At first, she tried to argue, saying it was for our future and that she hadn't meant any harm. But I kept showing her the evidence, every charge, every booking, every document. Her confident facade began to crack. She faltered, looked away, and fumbled through her words. Each new piece of proof made it harder for her to hold on to her lies. I could see the fear in her eyes now, the realization that I knew everything. Her carefully crafted image of control and innocence was gone. She couldn't deny the truth anymore. The smile that used to hide her deceit disappeared, replaced by a mix of shame, panic, and anger. I stayed calm, letting her reactions speak for themselves, knowing that the evidence alone was enough to show her betrayal. The room was tense, the silence thick, as she finally realized how completely she had been exposed. All the manipulation, the lies, and the secret actions she thought would remain hidden were now in front of her. I could feel the power shift in the room. For the first time, she wasn't in control, she was vulnerable, and I held the upper hand. I didn't yell or make threats. I let the facts do all the work. Her own greed and dishonesty were clear, and there was no way she could argue against it. It was a dramatic moment, the kind where years of trust and betrayal collided in a single, undeniable confrontation. By the end, Melissa was quiet, defeated, and visibly shaken. The confidence she once had was completely gone. I felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. The truth was out, and the consequences of her actions could no longer be avoided. That moment marked the climax of everything that had been building for weeks: the shock, the anger, the careful planning, and finally, the revelation. Melissa's lies and deceit were fully exposed, and I finally felt the first real sense of control and justice since discovering her betrayal. After confronting Melissa and showing her all the evidence, I moved quickly to take legal steps to reclaim what was rightfully mine. With my lawyer's help, we filed the necessary documents to reverse the inheritance transfer. The process wasn't instant, but every step I took brought me closer to regaining control. I carefully followed the legal procedures, ensuring that everything was done properly so that Melissa couldn't find any loophole to stop it. During this time, Melissa tried to protest, but the evidence was overwhelming. The lawyer explained each step to her, making it clear that her actions had consequences and that the law was on my side. I didn't have to raise my voice or argue, the facts spoke for themselves. Watching her face fall, seeing the confidence she had once carried completely disappear, gave me a quiet satisfaction. Justice was being served, but it wasn't about revenge, it was about correcting a wrong. As the inheritance was returned to me, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The money itself was important, yes, but even more than that, it symbolized reclaiming the control and security she had tried to take away. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. I had turned the tables without letting anger control my actions. I realized that measured, strategic steps could achieve far more than impulsive reactions. Melissa faced the consequences of her choices. She couldn't manipulate me anymore, and she couldn't hide from what she had done. But I chose not to humiliate her publicly or seek cruel revenge. That wasn't my goal. The goal was justice, fairness, and regaining what had been stolen. By acting with patience and intelligence, I had achieved that. This whole experience made me reflect deeply on my own growth. The betrayal had hurt me, there was no denying that. But it also taught me to be more vigilant, to value honesty, and to recognize my own strength. I realized that resilience doesn't mean reacting with anger, it means staying calm, thinking clearly, and taking action when the time is right. I also thought about trust and relationships. I had loved someone completely, and that love had been betrayed, but I refused to let that betrayal define me. Instead, I turned the pain into motivation to protect myself and my family. It made me stronger, more aware, and more capable of handling challenges in the future. By the end, everything was back in place. The inheritance was secure, my financial control restored, and Melissa could no longer interfere with my life. I had faced betrayal, navigated the emotional chaos, and come out on the other side wiser and stronger. I realized that the lessons learned from this painful experience were more valuable than any money. Justice had been achieved, and I had reclaimed not just my inheritance, but my sense of self and empowerment. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace, knowing that I had handled the situation with integrity, patience, and strength. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize now how much I learned from this experience. Melissa's betrayal cut deep, deeper than I could have imagined. I trusted her completely, and yet she used that trust to manipulate me and take what was never hers. At the time, it felt like my world had fallen apart, and I wasn't sure how I would ever move past the hurt. But now, I can see the lessons hidden in the pain. One thing I want to share is this: sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. It's painful, yes, but it's also a test of strength and wisdom. I learned that reacting with anger or revenge isn't always the answer. True power comes from patience, careful planning, and maintaining self-respect. When you stay calm and think clearly, you can turn even the worst situations into something that strengthens you. I also learned the importance of honesty and vigilance. Trust is a gift, but it must be earned and protected. I had assumed that love alone was enough to keep someone faithful, but that assumption nearly cost me everything. Now, I value honesty above comfort, and I understand that being alert and aware doesn't mean you're paranoid. It means you respect yourself enough to protect your life and your future. Even though what Melissa did hurt me, it also taught me resilience. I realized that betrayal doesn't define you, how you respond does. I could have let this experience destroy me, but instead, I chose to face it, plan carefully, and reclaim what was mine. That choice gave me strength I didn't know I had. It gave me the confidence that no matter what life throws at me, I can handle it with dignity and strategy. I want anyone listening to take this to heart: don't let betrayal make you bitter or weak. Let it teach you to value yourself more, to trust wisely, and to act when necessary. Pain can become power if you approach it with patience and thought. You don't have to seek revenge to feel strong, you just have to reclaim control over your life and make sure the people who hurt you don't have the power to dictate your future. In the end, I am at peace. I have justice, yes, but I also have growth, clarity, and a sense of empowerment that I didn't have before. The experience shaped me into a stronger, more aware person. I understand that life will always have challenges, and people may let you down, but you can rise above it. So, remember this: betrayal may sting, but patience, strategy, and self-respect can turn that pain into something meaningful. Stand tall, protect yourself, and never let someone else's actions decide your worth. Life is too short to be ruled by the deceit of others. You have the power to take control, and you can come out stronger on the other side. That's my story. It's one of betrayal, pain, and ultimately, empowerment. And if you take one thing from it, let it be this: stay strong, stay aware, and let life's challenges teach you how to rise, not how to fall.